You might want to Google me before you try to embarrass me again. The entire table went silent. Crystal glasses mid-air. Forks frozen halfway to mouths. A hedge fund manager coughed. Daniel Carter stared at the waitress standing beside his table. Her expression wasn't angry. It was calm. And that made it worse. Before we go any further, let me ask you something. Have you ever watched someone underestimate you and said nothing until the perfect moment? Tell me in the comments. And if you believe respect should never depend on a paycheck, stay with me. You'll want to see how this unfolds. Now let me take you back to where it started. Manhattan, Thursday night. Daniel Carter didn't lose rooms. He owned them. At 39, he had built one of the fastest-growing AI software companies in the country. Tech magazines called him visionary. Investors called him ruthless. Employees called him intense. He preferred efficient. Tonight's dinner wasn't social. It was strategic. 5 investors from Boston. 2 venture capital partners. 1 journalist from Forbes. Location mattered. Daniel chose La Bellevue, a Michelin-starred restaurant overlooking Central Park. White tablecloths, soft jazz, a wine list longer than most resumes. Image was everything. He adjusted his cufflinks as the guests settled in. I assume we'll be discussing expansion into Europe, one investor said. Daniel nodded. Already in motion. Confidence wasn't arrogance. It was preparation. Then she approached the table. Dark hair pulled into a neat bun. Simple black uniform. No flashy jewelry. No nervous smile. Good evening, she said evenly. I'll be taking care of your table tonight. Her voice was steady, clear. Daniel barely glanced at her. Just don't interrupt, he said lightly. We're discussing numbers that might be confusing. A couple of investors laughed politely. She didn't. Of course, she replied. And for a split second their eyes met. Hers didn't shift downward. They held his. Then she began describing the specials. Fluent. Precise. When she mentioned the wine pairings, one investor asked a question about regional sourcing. She answered without hesitation. Detailed. Specific. Daniel noticed. He shouldn't have. But he did. Still, he leaned back in his chair, deciding to reassert control. Later, midway through the meal, the journalist asked about market volatility. Daniel smirked. It's predictable if you understand behavioral patterns, he said. The waitress returned with wine. Behavioral patterns are rarely predictable, she said calmly while pouring. Especially in irrational markets. The table paused. Daniel looked up slowly. Excuse me? She finished pouring. Just a thought, she said. The journalist raised an eyebrow. Daniel felt something shift. A challenge. He didn't like challenges in rooms he paid for. He smiled thinly. Well, he said loudly enough for the table to hear. We all have theories. A subtle test. A small push. He expected her to retreat. She didn't. And that was the moment he made his mistake. Because Daniel Carter was used to people shrinking. He had no idea. This woman wasn't built to shrink at all. And before the night ended, the entire room would know it. The room felt tighter after that comment. Soft jazz still played in the background. Silverware clinked against porcelain. Outside the tall windows, Central Park was dark and quiet. But at Daniel's table, something had shifted. He leaned back in his chair. And what's your theory? He asked, voice smooth but sharp underneath. A couple of investors exchanged looks. The journalist sat up straighter. The waitress, Maya, according to the small name tag on her uniform, didn't rush. I wouldn't call it a theory, she said calmly. More like research. Daniel gave a faint laugh. Research, he repeated. On market volatility? Yes. And where exactly did you conduct this research? Her eyes stayed steady. Columbia University. The journalist blinked. Daniel didn't. He assumed she meant a class. Maybe a certification. Interesting, he said lightly. And what department lets waitstaff run market research between shifts? There it was. The line. Subtle enough to sound like a joke. Sharp enough to cut. A few uncomfortable laughs floated around the table. Maya set the wine bottle down gently. I completed my PhD in behavioral economics 2 years ago, she said. My dissertation focused on investor overconfidence in tech expansion markets. Silence. Real silence this time. One investor slowly lowered his glass. The journalist's pen froze mid-note. Daniel felt heat rise up his neck, but his expression didn't change. He didn't lose rooms. Is that so? He asked. Yes, she replied. She turned slightly toward the journalist. If you're writing about tech expansion, you may want to look into post-acquisition behavioral bias. It's more common than quarterly reports admit. The journalist's eyes widened slightly. I've actually been researching that, he said. I'd be happy to send you published data, Maya added evenly. Daniel's jaw tightened. He had tried to shrink her. Instead, she expanded. One of the investors cleared his throat. Dr. Thompson, is it? She nodded once. Why are you working here? He asked. A career pause, she said simply. Academia isn't always ethical. That answer carried weight. Daniel felt something unfamiliar pressing in his chest. Not anger, exposure. He had tried to turn her into entertainment. Instead, she had become the most qualified voice at the table. And she never raised her tone. She didn't insult him back. She didn't embarrass him. She just told the truth. That was worse. Because now every investor at the table was recalculating. Not just her. Him. The journalist closed his notebook slowly. Dr. Thompson, he said carefully, would you ever consider consulting? Daniel's fingers tightened slightly around his glass. Maya didn't look at Daniel when she answered. I'd consider conversations rooted in respect. The words landed without force, but they hit. Daniel held her gaze for a long second. This wasn't about ego anymore. It was about control, and he had just lost it. If you've ever believed intelligence deserves a voice, even when the room tries to silence it, stay here with this story. Some moments deserve witnesses. Maya picked up the wine bottle again. Enjoy the rest of your evening, she said. Then she walked away. The investors leaned in immediately. That was impressive, one muttered. The journalist looked directly at Daniel. You knew she had a PhD? Daniel didn't answer right away. He watched her across the room, moving table to table like nothing had happened. Calm, composed, untouchable. For the first time in years, Daniel Carter felt something crack. Not publicly, but internally. Because humiliation feels different when you realize you earned it. And something told him, this wasn't finished. Not even close. Daniel didn't sleep much that night. His penthouse overlooked the Hudson River. Floor-to-ceiling windows. City lights stretching across Manhattan. Usually the view calmed him. Tonight it didn't. He stood with a glass of water in his hand, replaying the dinner in his mind. Her voice, steady, precise, not defensive. That bothered him most. She hadn't tried to win. She just refused to lose. The next morning, his office in Midtown buzzed as usual. Assistants moved quickly. Screens flashed market updates. Coffee cups lined the conference table. Daniel walked in like nothing had happened. Europe expansion numbers are in, his CFO said. Send them to my email, Daniel replied. His tone was sharp, controlled, normal, but his mind kept drifting back to La Bellevue, to the moment the room shifted, to the look on the journalist's face, to the investor's silence. He told himself it didn't matter. She was a waitress. PhD didn't change that. He had companies to run. By noon, his assistant stepped into his office. Sir, Forbes wants a follow-up interview, she said. Schedule it. They mentioned a behavioral economist who was present at dinner. His jaw tightened slightly. Decline that angle, he said calmly. Yes, sir. He hated narratives he didn't control. Later that afternoon, one of the investors called. Daniel, the man said. That woman last night, Dr. Thompson. She was sharp. I'm aware, Daniel replied. Have you considered bringing her in as a consultant? Could strengthen your expansion strategy. Daniel leaned back in his chair. I don't build strategy off restaurant conversations. Pause on the line. Still, the investor said carefully, you misjudged her. The word sat heavy. Misjudged. I didn't misjudge, Daniel replied coolly. I corrected a distraction. He ended the call. But the word followed him. That evening, against his better judgment, he returned to La Bellevue. He told himself it was coincidence. Curiosity. Nothing more. The hostess recognized him immediately. Table for one, Mr. Carter? Yes. He scanned the room casually. She wasn't there. He felt something twist in his stomach. Relief. Disappointment. Hard to tell. Halfway through his meal, he saw her. Maya walked in from the back hallway, hair pulled up again, expression composed. She noticed him, didn't flinch, didn't smile, just a small nod of acknowledgement. He felt that same uncomfortable awareness rise again. When she approached his table, her voice was professional. Good evening. That's it? He asked quietly. That's appropriate, she replied. He studied her. You embarrassed me, he said. No, she answered evenly. You embarrassed yourself. The words weren't loud. They didn't need to be. He felt the sting anyway. I made a mistake, he said. That happens. You enjoyed it. She shook her head. I don't enjoy watching people underestimate others. It's predictable. That word again. Predictable. He exhaled. You could have humiliated me. I didn't need to. Silence stretched between them. Other diners chatted softly. Glasses clinked. New York moved outside those windows like always. He looked up at her. You're wasting your time here, he said. Her eyes sharpened slightly. You don't know that. You have a PhD. And you have billions, she replied. We're both choosing something. That landed deeper than he expected. He wasn't used to being spoken to like this. Equal. Direct. Unimpressed. I don't like losing control, he admitted quietly. She held his gaze. I noticed. He almost smiled despite himself. Almost. But pride is stubborn. I don't need a consultant, he said finally. That's fine, she replied. And I don't need to prove anything. Then don't. She stepped back. I'll give you a moment to decide on dessert. As she walked away, Daniel felt something unfamiliar pressing at him. Not anger, not ego, challenge, not of intelligence, of character, because denying respect doesn't erase it. It just delays it. And something told him, the longer he fought this, the more it would cost him. 2 weeks later, Daniel didn't have the luxury of denial. The European expansion he had pushed so confidently began to wobble. Partner firm in London backed out. Market reactions were sharper than expected. Headlines used words like overreach. In his Midtown conference room, tension sat thick in the air. This volatility doesn't make sense, his CFO said. The projections were solid. Daniel stared at the numbers on the screen. They were solid. On paper. But paper doesn't account for people. Investor fear spread faster than logic. Online speculation grew louder. A competitor hinted at instability. And for the first time in years, Daniel felt something he hated. Uncertainty. That afternoon, one of the Boston investors called again. You need a behavioral angle, the man said. Panic isn't rational. It's emotional. You know that. Daniel did know that. He also knew exactly who understood it better than anyone he'd met recently. 3 hours later, Daniel walked into La Bellevue before dinner service started. The restaurant was quiet. Chairs still upside down on tables. Staff moving through prep. Maya stood near the bar reviewing a small notebook. She looked up as he approached. You're early for dinner, she said. I'm not here for dinner. She closed the notebook slowly. Then say what you came to say. Direct. As always. My European expansion is facing investor panic, he said. Media speculation is amplifying it. And your dissertation focused on overconfidence bias in tech expansion. She didn't smile. I remember. He inhaled once. I want you to consult. The words felt heavier than they should have. She watched him carefully. Why? She asked. Because you're qualified. That's new. He didn't react. And because, he added, steady now, I underestimated you. That won't happen again. Silence stretched between them. Staff moved quietly in the background. The smell of fresh bread drifted from the kitchen. You humiliated me in a room full of investors, she said. I know. And now you want my help. Yes. No ego. I'll manage it. She studied him longer this time, not judging, assessing. If I consult, she said slowly, I do it on my terms. Name them. Equal voice in strategic meetings. Full access to expansion data. And no condescension. He nodded once. Agreed. And I'm not doing this because you're a billionaire, she added. I'm doing it because I care about research being applied correctly. I understand. Another pause. She picked up her notebook. When do you want to start? Now. That surprised her slightly. He noticed. I don't like wasting time, he added. I know, she said. They left the restaurant together and stepped into the late afternoon Manhattan air. Taxis rushed past. Street vendors called out. The city moved fast as always. In his car, silence filled the space between them. Not awkward, focused. You realize, she said as they crossed into Midtown. If I find flaws in your plan, I'll say so. I expect you to. Even if it costs you. He looked at her. If it costs me, I want to know before it collapses. That was new too. Honesty without defense. When they entered his office, executives looked surprised. Dr. Thompson will be consulting on the expansion, Daniel said calmly. No explanation. No apology. Just recognition. Maya stepped forward, already scanning the projected data on the screen. Show me the investor sentiment trend lines, she said. The room shifted. Not because she was loud, because she was certain. And Daniel felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel before. Relief. But forced proximity doesn't just reveal strengths. It reveals flaws. And as Maya began reviewing the numbers, her expression slowly changed. Daniel, she said quietly, you didn't just miscalculate expansion. He looked at her. You triggered panic. The room went still. And if she was right, this wasn't just a market issue. It was personal. The conference room in Midtown went quiet. Screens glowed with red numbers. News alerts scrolled across the bottom of the financial channel mounted on the wall. Maya stood near the head of the table, remote in hand. You announced the expansion during a volatility spike, she said calmly. You framed it as dominance instead of growth. Daniel crossed his arms. Confidence drives markets. Measured confidence does, she corrected. Aggression triggers fear. A few executives shifted in their seats. She clicked to the next slide. These spikes, she said, pointing. They follow your interviews. Certain phrases repeat. Daniel frowned slightly. Like what? We'll outpace competitors. No one can touch us. This is inevitable. He recognized the language. It had always worked before. That language signals risk, she continued. Investors hear overextension. Competitors hear challenge. Media hears arrogance. Silence. She turned to face him directly. You didn't just expand, she said. You provoked. The word hit harder than the others. Daniel felt it settle deep. He wasn't used to being analyzed in his own boardroom. But she wasn't wrong. He had built his reputation on dominance, on never backing down, on never showing doubt. And now that posture was shaking investor confidence. Fix it, one executive muttered under his breath. Maya didn't flinch. It's fixable, she said. But the tone has to change. Daniel looked at her. How? You address the market calmly. You acknowledge volatility. You shift from conquest to partnership. That sounds weak. It sounds stable. The room felt warmer. Or maybe that was just his ego burning. Later that evening, after the executives left, Daniel remained seated at the long glass table. Maya stood by the window looking down at the city lights. You're good at this, he said finally. I know. No arrogance. Just fact. Why leave academia? He asked. She was quiet for a moment. Because research can be manipulated, she said. Data twisted to fit whoever funds it. And that bothered you? Yes. He nodded slowly. You walked away from status, he said. I walked away from noise. He studied her. You don't chase recognition. She turned slightly. I don't need a room to clap for me. That line lingered in the air. Daniel had spent years chasing rooms that clapped. Magazine covers. Panels. Applause. For a moment he saw himself clearly. Not powerful. Loud. I built my company from nothing, he said quietly. People didn't take me seriously at first. And now? She asked. Now they do. At what cost? The question wasn't accusatory. It was honest. He didn't answer right away, because the truth was uncomfortable. He had confused intimidation with respect. He had mistaken silence for admiration. And when he tried to humiliate her that night, it wasn't about her at all. It was about protecting the image he built. You deserved better that night, he said finally. She held his gaze. Yes, I did. He nodded once. I'm sorry. The words were simple. Not dramatic. Real. She watched him carefully. Apologies matter when they lead to change, she said. He exhaled. They will. She picked up her bag. I'll draft a communication strategy tonight, she said. You need to address investors by morning. Thank you, he replied. She paused at the door. Daniel. Yes. If you want this to work, it can't just be a strategy shift. He frowned slightly. What do you mean? It has to be a character shift. Then she left. The office felt larger without her. Quieter. Daniel sat alone in the dim light, staring at the skyline. He realized something unsettling. She wasn't just fixing his market problem. She was exposing him. And exposure is uncomfortable. But sometimes it's necessary. If stories like this remind you that growth starts with humility, stay with this journey. Some lessons are earned the hard way. Daniel picked up his phone. Tomorrow he would face investors again. But this time, he wouldn't hide behind dominance. And whether that made him stronger or cost him everything, he was about to find out. The next morning, Manhattan felt sharper than usual. Cold wind moved between the buildings. News trucks parked outside Daniel's headquarters. Cameras waited. Inside the lobby, employees whispered as they checked their phones. Daniel stood in front of a mirror in his private office. No smirk. No rehearsed dominance. Just a man about to step into a room that might not clap this time. Maya stood near the conference table reviewing final notes. Keep it steady, she said. No grand promises. No attacks. He nodded. And if they push? They will, she replied. Answer calmly anyway. The press conference began at 9 a.m. Investors joined by video from Boston and Chicago. Financial reporters filled the back row. Daniel stepped to the podium. For a second, the old instinct rose. Control the room. Own it. Instead, he paused. Over the past few weeks, he began, voice even, our expansion strategy created uncertainty. That responsibility is mine. A small shift in the room. Not dramatic, but noticeable. He continued. We moved fast. We spoke boldly. And in doing so, we overlooked how volatility affects trust. Maya watched from the side. Reporters scribbled. One raised a hand. Are you admitting overconfidence? Daniel didn't flinch. Yes, he said. Silence followed. Real silence. No spin. No deflection. Just truth. The stock dipped slightly during the broadcast. His CFO texted him from the back of the room. This could hurt short-term. Daniel kept going. We're adjusting our approach. Partner-focused growth. Transparent communication. Long-term stability over short-term headlines. When he finished, there was no applause. Just cameras lowering. Reporters filing out. Back upstairs, executives gathered quickly. Stocks down 3%, someone said. Daniel nodded. It'll stabilize, Maya replied calmly. Confidence rebuilds slower than it spikes. But not everyone agreed. By noon, a major investor sent a blunt email. Your leadership tone is shifting. That concerns us. Daniel read it twice. The old instinct surged again. Push back. Dominate. Instead, he closed his laptop. Later that afternoon, he found Maya in the conference room reviewing updated charts. 3% drop, he said. Yes. You were wrong. She looked up. No, she replied softly. This is the correction before recovery. He walked closer. Investors are questioning my leadership. They're questioning your ego adjustment, she said. That's different. He ran a hand through his hair. You make this sound simple. It isn't, she answered. It's necessary. Silence filled the space. He studied her. You're calm because it's not your company on the line. That landed wrong the moment it left his mouth. Her expression changed. You think I don't understand risk? She asked quietly. I didn't say that. You implied it. He exhaled sharply. This is my life's work. And you think I don't know what that feels like? She replied. I walked away from mine because integrity mattered more. The room felt tighter. You asked me to help, she continued. Not to be blamed when it gets uncomfortable. He looked away. She wasn't raising her voice. She didn't need to. Do you regret bringing me in? She asked. The question hung between them. No, he said quickly. Then trust the process. He didn't answer, because trust was the hardest part. The market closed that afternoon still slightly down. Social media debated his softened stance. Financial blogs questioned whether he had lost his edge. That word again. Edge. By evening, the pressure built quietly. Maya packed her things. I'll review tomorrow's projections from home, she said. He nodded without looking up. She paused at the door. If you need the old version of yourself back, she said softly. I'm not the right consultant. The door closed gently behind her. Daniel sat alone in the dim office. 3%. Public doubt. Private tension. Growth costs something. Sometimes reputation. Sometimes pride. And sometimes, the person who helped you see clearly. Have you ever lost something because you were too afraid to change? Comment below. Daniel stared at his reflection in the dark window. If he chose ego now, he wouldn't just lose market trust. He'd lose her. And for the first time, that possibility felt worse. Daniel didn't go home that night. He stayed in his midtown office long after the city lights dimmed. Traffic thinned below. The hum of Manhattan softened. Cleaning crews moved quietly through the halls. He stood by the window, jacket off, tie loosened. 3%. Not catastrophic, but symbolic. He thought about the investor email. Your leadership tone is shifting. They weren't afraid of losses. They were afraid of change. So was he. He walked back to the conference table and opened his laptop again. Market sentiment charts glowed on the screen. Social media threads scrolled past. Some praised his honesty. Some called him weak. He sat there reading it all without reacting. For the first time, he didn't want to respond fast. He wanted to respond right. He closed the laptop. Silence filled the room. He thought about the night at La Bellevue. The way he tried to shrink her. The way she refused. He thought about how easily he had blamed her hours earlier. And he saw it clearly now. Every time pressure rose, he reached for control. Not clarity. Not partnership. Control. He stepped into the hallway and took the elevator down to the lobby. The night air outside was cold. He walked 2 blocks without thinking. Past a late-night pizza spot. Past a newsstand closing up. He stopped. Pulled out his phone. Called her. It rang 3 times. Hello. Her voice was calm, but distant. I was wrong, he said. Silence. About the strategy? She asked. About you, he replied. He heard her breathe softly on the other end. I blamed you because I felt exposed, he continued. That wasn't fair. Another pause. You're not used to sharing power, she said. No, he admitted. And I don't want to lose you because of that. The honesty surprised even him. Traffic moved in the background. Cab drove past. You won't lose me over market shifts, she said quietly. You'll lose me if you retreat into ego. He nodded, even though she couldn't see it. I won't, he said. Prove it. How? Don't just adjust the numbers, she replied. Adjust how you lead. He thought about that. Not performance. Practice. I want you beside me tomorrow, he said. At the investor call. As an equal voice. She didn't answer right away. That will change how they see you, she said. Good, he replied. And if they push back? Then they push back. The wind moved down the street. Felt sharper now. You're serious, she said. Yes. A small shift in her tone. Okay, she said. I'll be there. He ended the call and stood there for a moment. No applause. No headlines. Just a decision. The next morning, investors dialed in again from across the country: New York, Boston, San Francisco. This time, Daniel didn't sit alone at the head of the table. Maya sat beside him. Not behind. Not in the corner. Beside. When questions came, he didn't interrupt her. He didn't soften her answers. He didn't reclaim the spotlight. He listened. And when she challenged him openly on a timeline projection, he nodded. You're right, he said in front of everyone. We'll adjust. A few investors exchanged glances. But something else happened too. The tension eased. Because confidence shared feels different than confidence imposed. After the call ended, Daniel looked at her. How was that? He asked. She held his gaze. Better. Not perfect. Better. And sometimes better is the first real step forward. But markets take time. Trust takes longer. And while numbers slowly began to stabilize that afternoon, Daniel realized something deeper was shifting. He didn't just want her as a consultant. He wanted her in his life. Not because she challenged him, but because she saw him. And now, he had to decide if he was ready to let her stay. 3 months later, Manhattan looked different to Daniel. Not because the skyline changed, because he did. The European expansion stabilized. The stock recovered slowly, then steadily. Investors stopped questioning his tone and started praising the company's transparency. But the real shift wasn't in the numbers. It was in the room. Board meetings felt different now. Voices weren't silenced. Strategy wasn't built on intimidation. It was built on discussion. Maya no longer waited tables. She accepted a formal role as head of behavioral strategy. Not because he offered power, because she negotiated it. Clear terms. Equal authority. No pedestal. One evening, after a long day at the office, they walked out together into the cool New York air. The city buzzed like always. Food carts on the corner. Yellow taxis rushing past. Office lights flickering off floor by floor. You know, Daniel said, hands in his coat pockets. I used to think wealth meant never being challenged. Maya glanced at him. And now, I think it means having someone who challenges you and stays. She smiled slightly. That's not something money buys. No, he agreed. It's something you earn. They crossed the street as the light changed. You tried to humiliate me, she said lightly. I did. And now I'm grateful you didn't let me. She stopped walking for a second. Most people with power don't change, she said quietly. I almost didn't. But you did. He looked at her. Because you refused to shrink. A small silence passed between them. Not heavy. Warm. They reached Central Park and stepped inside. The city noise softened behind the trees. Streetlights cast long shadows across the path. You don't have to prove anything anymore, she said. I know. And you don't have to dominate rooms to deserve them. He exhaled slowly. For a long time, I thought respect came from fear, he admitted. And now, it comes from listening. They found an empty bench. The air carried the faint smell of fall. Leaves scattered across the path. He turned toward her fully. When I tried to embarrass you that night, he said, it wasn't about you. I know. It was about protecting an image. And now, I'd rather protect this. He reached for her hand. She let him. Not rushed. Not dramatic. Just real. If you believe growth matters more than pride, stay with stories like this. Some lessons don't show up on balance sheets, they show up in who we become. She looked at him carefully. "You're not perfect," she said. "I'm aware. But you're willing. Yes, that's rare." He smiled. "So are you." A soft laugh escaped her. For the first time, there was no power imbalance. No test. No stage. Just two people who met at their worst moment. And chose better. Weeks later, Forbes ran a new feature. Not about dominance. Not about bold expansion. The headline read, "Daniel Carter's Strategic Shift. Why Listening Built the Strongest Quarter Yet." In the photo, Maya stood beside him. Equal. And when people asked how he turned things around, Daniel answered simply, "I learned to respect the smartest person in the room, even when I didn't realize it was her." But the real victory wasn't public. It was quiet. Late nights reviewing data together. Morning coffee before work. Walking through Central Park without needing to impress anyone. He once believed wealth meant power. Now he knew. It meant partnership. It meant humility. It meant love built on respect. Do you believe some people enter your life to humble you before they heal you? Drop a heart if this story stayed with you. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.